morning, grade 10s. This is obviously a voice that you are not used to teaching you. However, because in grade 11 I will be teaching you about classification, I thought, I will be revising it very quickly with you in any case in grade 11 and teaching you new aspects of it. So I thought it would be easier to be the one to teach you now during lockdown as well. So when we look at classification, understand that everything in life is classified. The fact that we have um, different genders, different races, different eye colors, different hair colors, the fact that you can see that somebody is different or something is different to you, that you are not a car and you are not a worm, is all um, comes down to classification. All right, we look at something and we go, what is similar between us or what is different? And so I don't know if you guys can remember, especially maybe the girls, when you were younger, in magazines there were these little, like, it looked like a little mind map almost, or not a mind map, like a flow chart, where it started at one thing. So let's say the question was, who is your husband going to be? And so if you remember what those looked like, there would be a whole bunch of like little flow thingies, and at the end there would be 5 options, and if you followed those options you would end up at a particular husband. Do you remember those? So those are a way of classification, right? So I mean, you all know BuzzFeed, and those of you who've been really bored during the holidays, or during, lockdown, um, if you've done those quizzes that they do, everything is classification. So you answer and you choose one of the options, and you end up somewhere. So let's talk about, for example, which Disney princess are you? And the first question is choose a color, and then you choose your color, and then choose your dream house, and then you choose your dream house, and then choose whatever, and so you go. And if you and I had to be in the same room and make our choices based on whatever you choose and based on whatever I choose, each of us would be a different Disney princess. And so that technically is a matter of classification, all right? It says, by your choices, we classify you as this, all right? So when we do classification in biology, we look at things exactly the same way. So does it do this? Yes. If it does that, then it is a this. If it is a this, does it have that? If yes, it's this. If no, it's that. If it doesn't and it is whatever, then does it have this or does it have that? So if you just look at boys and girls, for example, males and females, right? Obviously, we are all we come from the kingdom Animalia, all right? We are all Homo sapiens. We obviously they're not all mammals. We are a human being. The difference between a boy and a girl is literally one aspect, gender. Okay. And so if you had to follow along on a series of questions for classification, boys and girls would answer yes, 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 yes for all characteristics up until basically gender comes into it. Obviously, then that quiz wouldn't include things like eye color, hair color, etc., because that would have nothing to do with gender, all right? It's going to lead me up to gender. Once we've established gender, we can look at things like hair color, eye color, blah, 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 blah. All right, so we do this in biology to be able to put things into groups and say, this is how these things work, and this is how those things work. You, for example, have heard of, or you know that we exist as plants or animals, or bacteria or viruses, which we're going to do a lot in grade 11. Somewhere along the line, something had to come up where someone was like, okay, hold on, that thing doesn't look like a human being, so therefore it can't be, or that thing doesn't look like an animal, and therefore we have to put it into another group. And so just looking at the history very briefly, and please, these first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points are really, if anything, they might come up in a multiple choice or something. It's really not essential stuff that you know all this information, but rather just understand the history behind it. So basically, in saying that, if you look at the first point, it says that Aristotle came up with a two-kingdom system. In other words, this man looked at things and went, everything that exists, anything that exists, that is living, okay, let's just include that in there, is either a plant or an animal. So coronavirus, for example, if he studied coronavirus, he would have to choose whether it is a plant or an animal. And he would then have had to study the similarities that it has with either plants or animals to be able to classify it. Okay, and obviously that is a very, very basic classification strategy, two kingdoms only. So therefore, building onto that, then this new guy called Haeckel came along, and he said, no, wait, everything can't be either only a plant or an animal. There must be something more. So he added a third kingdom, and that kingdom he called Protista. So he said everything that isn't a plant or an animal must be a protist. And bacteria, for example, he included into that kingdom of Protista. So then we had this three-kingdom system with you are either a plant or an animal or a protist. After 60 years, a man named Herbert Copeland came along, and he said, there's these other organisms that we've classified them as protists, but actually there's too much that is different about them, and we can't actually classify them as protists. So he came along and he suggested that we should have a four-kingdom system where we include bacteria as a fourth kingdom. All right, so building onto that, then Robert Whittaker came along and he added fungi, so for example, mushrooms, mold, as a kingdom. And he said, but bacteria must be classified as a Monera. So he wanted it to have its own name. So bacteria then fell under the kingdom Monera, and we added fungi as another kingdom. So he then basically still had this four-kingdom system, but instead of plants, animals, bacteria, he had in bacteria and Protista, he had plants, animals, Protista, and Monera. Okay. And then Carl Visser looked at Monera and said, okay, but within Monera, we should have eubacteria and archaebacteria. Two distinctly different types of bacteria. Okay. We have therefore developed what is called a six-kingdom system. All right, so if we name the six, we've got plants and animals and Protista and Monera and fungi. The Monera then gets split into two, which is eubacteria and archaebacteria. So then technically six. Plants, animals, Protista, fungi, eubacteria, and archaebacteria. We have since, however, simplified it into a five-kingdom system. So it's a simplified version where we throw eubacteria and archaebacteria into just the Monera system. So therefore, we speak of either being a plant, an animal, a protist, a fungus, or a bacteria or bacterium. All right. If you have a look at this point over here, it says to you that the five-kingdom system is a simplified version, which we refer to classifying eubacteria and archaebacteria into one kingdom called Monera. All right, so bacteria, the kingdom is Monera. and then it tells you that they are prokaryotes. Now, everything that is living can either be classified as a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Okay, so any living structure, and please notice I keep saying living, and I haven't spoken about viruses because viruses are non-living, and in grade 11 we are going to we're going to talk about that a lot, so I'm not going to get into that at this point. But at the moment we are just classifying living organisms. Okay, so living organisms are either prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Prokaryotes or eukaryotes. If something is a prokaryote, it means it does not have a true nucleus and its organelles are not surrounded by membranes. So we say it has no membrane-bound organelles. So imagine you've learned the cell and you've learned about all the organelles of the cell. Those organelles then don't actually have a membrane surrounding them. Okay, and there's no nucleus that is actually performing the function of a nucleus within a prokaryote. So bacteria are eukaryotic. Everything else is what did I just say? Apologies, I'm not going to redo this video just for that. Bacteria are prokaryotic. Everything else is eukaryotic. I hope that's what I said the first time around. A eukaryote is an organism that has a true nucleus. So the cells of this organism have a true nucleus, and it has membrane-bound organelles. Please, there is a mistake in this PowerPoint. This should not say no. Please make sure to scratch that out. Okay, so the biggest difference is that prokaryotes have no nucleus and no membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotes do have a nucleus and they do have membrane-bound organelles. You can, in your spare time, watch this video for further understanding to what I have said. Okay, so in the first slide, we said that we have 3 domains and 6 kingdoms. The bacteria, we've got eubacteria and archaebacteria. We then have protists, fungi, plants, and animals. So you can see what I said. Bacteria are prokaryotes, and everything else are eukaryotes. Okay. And as I've said here, viruses are non-living, so then therefore they're not classified into the kingdoms of living organisms. So when we look at these living organisms, now we know that it's a plant or an animal or a bacterium or a fungus or whatever the case may be. But even then, let's just look at animals, for example. If I just look around me, I'm a human, but I have a dog and a cat and I don't have a cat. What am I saying? I'm a human. I have a dog, 2 dogs, and a bunny. All right, and I don't look like them, and they don't look like me. But we're all animals. We're all put into the same classification. But somewhere along the line, we have to look at ourselves and go, okay, although we are all animals, something is different. And so we then start looking at those characteristics to be able to subdivide those kingdoms. Now, Carl Linnaeus, he was the father of naming, binomial nomenclature. He came up with a system and he said, okay, when we look at organisms, we need to be able to name them, not give them a name like Ashton Fenter. Give them a name that classifies what they are. I mean, all of you have a name, and if your friends say your name, then you know who you are, and if they talk about you behind your back, then somebody knows exactly who they're talking about. But when we want to talk about you as a organism, we have to give you a name that classifies you the same as me, as the same as Mrs. Lester, the same as my son, etc. Okay, and so those names come from binomial nomenclature. It is the language of classification. It gives an organism a universal name. If I say Homo sapiens, you know, or you should know, that you as a human being are a Homo sapien. So it allows us universally to understand. I mean, think about it, guys. A dog is a dog. I don't know who came up with the name dog, but dog is dog in English, and dog is hond in Afrikaans. Now, I don't know other languages, so if you ask me what dog is in Zulu or Sotho or French or Xhosa, I cannot tell you. But in every language, it has a different name. So if we now are speaking with someone in French and we say dog, they have no idea if they speak French what we are talking about. So we need a language that if we speak to a Frenchman or a Spaniard or someone who we're speaking to in Zulu or whatever the case may be, we all understand what we're talking about. So it's a universal language, all right? And that universal language always comes in two parts. It has two names. So as I've been referring to Homo sapiens all the time, Homo is the first name, sapiens is the second name. The first name, always spelled with a capital letter, is the genus. We're going to get more into that, what a genus is in classification now. And the second name is the species. In other words, I'm sure you guys, and you'll do this a lot in matric, but you know that when we evolved, from apes, we had Homo sapiens and Homo erectus, and so we had all these different groups. They all belong to the same genus, Homo, but they are all different species. Okay, and species name is always in a small letter. So looking at these two parts, we can all see what species something belonged to, and what genus it belonged to. But by that, we then can derive from which kingdom it came from, but we have to follow a sequence. So there are 7 taxonomic ranks, excluding the 3 domains. 7 taxonomic ranks that you start off with to be able to classify an organism. So we spoke about domains. Domains isn't listed here, so domains we don't include in the taxonomic ranks. But we start with kingdom. So in the beginning of this lesson, I started with 5 kingdoms, right? Plant, animal, bacteria, fungi, and protist. 5 kingdom. So you have to belong to one of those. Okay, so in this example, they've put animals there. Okay. Then those kingdoms we divide into what are called phyla. Phyla is the plural, so therefore one phylum is the group, one singular group, okay? And we do this a lot in grade 11, which is why you have to understand what a phylum is. But basically, it's the groups of those animals. So this example speaks about chordates. Now think about, for example, a jellyfish. A jellyfish doesn't have a spine or bones or any kind of vertebral column, whereas human beings do. So obviously somewhere along the line we have to belong to a different group. So that phylum looks at each kingdom and splits it into common characteristics. Then once you belong to a phylum, it then splits us into different classes. So looking at everybody with the same characteristic, phyla, then saying, okay, of those, certain ones have this characteristic and certain ones have that characteristic. Again, going back to my BuzzFeed quizzes or my little who you're going to marry type of thing. If you have a backbone, you are a chordate. If you are a chordate and you have fur or milk glands, you are a mammal. If you are a mammal, then you can either have this or that, okay, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go through every single classification, but there are 7, as I said, taxonomic groups: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And you'll remember, genus and species are what we use to name the organism, right? For the purposes of grade 10, what you need to know is the order: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So there's a little mnemonic at the bottom here. Katy Perry comes over for grape soda. Or kids prefer candy over fried green spinach. I think adults prefer candy over fried green spinach too. I think everybody prefers candy over fried green spinach because I don't know what fried green spinach is. Okay, anyway. So I need you for grade 10 purposes to just be able to rank them. So know that kingdom is number 1 and species is number 7, for example, so that you know the order. We can test that at grade 10 level. All right. Also, if I tell you, let's say, for example, I had to give this in a test and I mixed them all up, I jumbled them all up, and I said, okay, the family name of an organism is hominid. The class is mammal. The phylum is chordates. The genus is Homo. The species is sapiens. The kingdom, or Homo sapiens, the kingdom is animals. And I gave it to you all in a jumbled up manner. You should then be able to, at the end, put these groups into a list for me and tell me the name of the animal, okay, Homo sapiens, or the name of the organism in any case. All right. But again, I'm stressing, what I need you to know is not the stuff over here, right? We would have to give you this, okay? Because, different names are going to exist for every single organism under the sun. But you need to know this, the 7 taxonomic groups and their ranks, all right? Okay, so here's just an example. And again, you are welcome to go and watch the video in your own time. But just having a look here at a taxonomic example. Okay, so we start off with the domain. The domain is eukarya, so living things that are eukaryotes. Okay, then we put them into the kingdom. The kingdom is animals. Of those animals, we're then looking only at animals that have a vertebral column. Those animals that have a vertebral column are called chordates, chordata. So all these animals that you can see here, they have a vertebral column. So a zebra is a chordate, but so is a dolphin, and so is a bear. All right, so we all fall under, a human being should be here too. We fall under the phylum chordata because we have a vertebral column. Then we look at these chordata and we go, okay, some of these chordata are mammals. You all know what a mammal is. So looking at these animals again, now suddenly fish are not mammals, so we take them out. Okay, that is the class. Then we look at the class and go, some of these are different to others in the sense of how they feed. So the ones that feed by hunting and killing their own prey are carnivora. Now, carnivora is the order. Okay. Then of those carnivora, some of them are more bear-like. Okay, they resemble bears, or they have characteristics that make them different from the hunting kind of animals, or when I say hunting, I mean like the stalking kind of animals. And so we put them into a family. Now, bears are all a family. I hope you know that we all love each other, but in the animal kingdom, families, so we're not going to have a family of bears and lions in the same family, okay? So that's their family. Of that group of the family, Ursidae, we then look at ones that are similar and have similar characteristics. So from that, we are able to classify the genus. And then we look at one single organism and we classify the species. Okay, so if you see here, we have the American black bear, which is Ursus, the genus name, Americanus, the name of the specific black bear. So this bear over here, the polar bear, for example, and don't ask me what its species name is, but its genus would be Ursus, and then the species, the second name would be different to Americanus, for example. All right. Again, what I'm stressing is you need to know kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay, so when we look at these characteristics of organisms and we classify them, we do this by creating what is called a phylogenetic tree. Now, in grade 11, we're going to do a lot of phylogenetic trees. We're going to learn about plants and animals and do phylogenetic trees in learning about them. And it kind of resembles a family tree, all right? Except if you think of your family tree, if you start off, I'm not going to go very far into a family tree. Let's just start at your mom's parents. Your mom's parents had a child. That was your mom. Your mom married your dad. Had a child with your dad. In any case, some parents don't get married. Had a child with your dad. Your dad had parents, so now you go up again. Then if you look at your dad and your mom, they got married, they had a child. That is you. One day, you will have a child. Some of you will choose not to have children, and that's also okay. And if hopefully you don't choose to have children anytime soon either. You will possibly have a child with somebody else. Then if we follow that person's family tree, that person had parents, and each of those parents had parents, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we can sort of look at it as a family tree to see where it came from. However, a phylogenetic tree doesn't look at who's the mommy and who's the daddy. It looks at characteristics. So it says this organism had these characteristics. Then a new characteristic developed, which made it this organism. Then a new characteristic developed, which made it this organism, and so on and so forth. Okay, and so that forms what we know or what we see as a phylogenetic tree. Grade 10s, I'm not going to further explain phylogenetic trees. Just at grade 10 level, be able to know what is a phylogenetic tree. Okay, so it's classification based on different characteristics of organisms. Okay, and be able to recognize it and recognize that it shows the relationships that have evolved. So evolutionary relationships amongst organisms that shows different characteristics. That's important. Okay, different characteristics, not familial relationships or anything like that. Evolutionary relationships that show different characteristics of organisms. Okay, that's all I need you to recognize at grade 10 level. In grade 11, we'll do it a lot more in depth. Okay. If we then look at other ways of identifying the characteristics of organisms, we can use biological keys to classify these organisms. Now, this is kind of like those little puzzles, those BuzzFeed things again. We either use a dichotomous key or a branching key. Okay. A dichotomous key, we look at the main characteristics and we go yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. So let's look at that example that we've just done, this one. Let's start at kingdom. Okay, so if we look at we'll start at domain so that we can put it into a kingdom. So everything is eukaryotic. So to put it into the domain of eukarya would be, does this organism have a true nucleus? Yes. So it's in the domain eukarya. Does this organism, is this organism heterotrophic? Yes. Okay, so that's one of the characteristics of an animal, obviously. And maybe another thing is it able to do the Mrs. Green things, move, respirate, show sensitivity, grow, reproduce, excrete, and nourish? If yes, then it is a kingdom, Animalia. Then we would ask, does this organism have a backbone? Yes, it is a chordate. Is this animal warm-blooded and does it feed and nurture its young? Yes, then it would be a mammal. Does this animal hunt and kill its own prey? Yes, carnivora. Does this animal have a fur coat and claws. I don't know. Yes, Earth Day, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so obviously I've done all the yeses. Some of it would be no, and then from no we'd have to go, okay, and further investigate into that. All right, so I've just done all the yeses for now. Okay, that is a dichotomous key. We'll do an example now. The second example is a branching key. And this one, we don't ask yes or no questions, we ask general questions. So this is more sort of like the BuzzFeed ones of like, which is your favorite color? And choose the house that you like. General questions to be able to derive our answer. Okay. So if we look at a dichotomous key, this is the most basic. It's a silly example, but it's a basic example of a dichotomous key. All right. Dichotomous keys in real life are very, very, very intricate, right? They don't only have 9 points, they have millions of points. And you'll go back and forth a lot. But I want you to just understand the main example and be able to do a dichotomous key yourself. So let's choose a minion. I'm going to choose minion number 4. This little Okie over here, he's speaking to me. All right. So we are going to look at him. We don't know what he is. We don't know his name. We don't know what group he belongs to, for example. Okay. Obviously, this one, as I said, is very basic, guys. So we're just going to give this minion a name, for example, now. Okay. So let's look. We always start at number 1. I hope that you know that we start at number 1. So we're looking at our minion. Ignore all the other cute little thingies. Only our minion is number 4. We look at number 4, and we've got 2 options there. The minion has 1 eye, or the minion has 2 eyes. Okay, in this case, our minion has 1 eye. So it tells us, go to number 2. So we go to number 2. The minion is smiling, or the minion is not smiling. That minion is not smiling. So it tells us his name is Phil. All right, let's do a different one. Let's do minion number 2. See, that was very basic. Let's do minion number 2. The minion has 1 eye, or the minion has 2 eyes. He has 1 eye. So we go to number 2. Number 2 says the minion is smiling, or the minion is not smiling. In our case, the minion is smiling. So it tells us to go to number 6. See, we don't go to 3 now. We ignore 3. We go exactly where it tells us to go. So we go to number 6. The minion is saluting, or the minion has his finger on his chin. Okay, so he doesn't have either of those, but saluting is like salutations, like saying hello. He looks friendly, so our minion's name is Kevin. Okay, obviously, guys, this is more specific and better done than this example, but basically what I want you to see is we start at 1, we choose the option that's most relevant for our option, we go where the dichotomous key tells us to go. If it told us to go to number 5, then we look at number 5, we choose the option that's most relevant to our minion, we go where it tells us to go. When it doesn't tell us to go anywhere else, so for example, look at 5B, it doesn't tell us to go anywhere. It tells us this is number, or this one is his name is Tim, and that's the end of it. Then you have done the classification that was necessary. You have classified that minion. You have given him a name. You are done, finished. All right. If you look at a branching key, then for example, so this branching key, a branching key often looks like a phylogenetic tree, except in the phylogenetic tree, we're not going to actually put the words there. We're just going to show the branches. But if you look here at starting off at vertebrate classes, so vertebrate classes would have been chordata. Does it have fur? If it has fur, it's a mammal. If it has no fur, does it have feathers or no feathers? If it has feathers, it's a bird. If it has no feathers, does it fertilize externally or internally? If internal, it's a reptile. If external, does it have gills? Does the adult have gills, or does the adult have no gills? If the adult does have gills, it's a fish. If the adult does not have gills, it's an amphibian. And then obviously now we've been able to classify all different groups of chordata. Okay, and that's the end of that. So if I just look at very quickly what's important for you guys to know for this chapter, be able to name or tell me the difference between a prokaryote and a eukaryote. Be able to name 6 kingdoms or 5 kingdoms and tell me why viruses are not in those kingdoms. Know the name Carl Linnaeus. He was the father of binomial nomenclature. Know the word binomial nomenclature, the language of classification. Know that when we name something, we name it by genus and species. And know that there are 7 taxonomic ranks. Know those 7 taxonomic ranks in order. Know the basis of what a phylogenetic tree is. Know that we have 2 types of biological keys which we use to name organisms, and be able to read and establish a dichotomous key and follow a branching key to establish which group you are looking for. And that's that. It's a very simple chapter, this one. For the sake of grade 10, in grade 11, it will become a lot more interesting, I think. Good luck with your learning, grade 10s. Have a lovely day further.